good to have you join us today. Hello and welcome to Business Daily. I'm Lee Ji-eun in Seoul. Before we get started, let's first take a glimpse at today's highlights. 6 years have gone by since Korea joined the OECD's Development Assistance Committee, and now the country is looking for more ways to help other countries and share its know-hows. Will China's long-awaited dream come true? The IMF will soon decide whether it'll give the Chinese yuan the green light to join its basket of reserve currencies. But first, world trade in 2015 may log the slowest growth in 6 years, recording the worst performance seen since the 2009 global financial crisis. This is according to figures released by the Netherlands Bureau for Economic Policy Analysis, which indicate the global trade volume in the first 6 months of this year contracted compared to the same time last year. During the third quarter, growth was at a mere 0.7%. And economic research consultancy Capital Economics said this was largely due to sluggish expansion in China and other emerging economies, as well as weak exports from the U.S. owing to the strong dollar. Fourth quarter projections are not bright either, as October's exports and imports from China and the U.S. dropped on year. Meanwhile, a local think tank is optimistic that Korea's exports, long in the doldrums all year, will see moderate improvement next year. In its outlook released on Wednesday, Korea Institute for Industrial Economics and Trade projected outbound shipments will grow by 2.1% next year from this year to reach some $475 million. It anticipated a rise in demand for home electronics on the back of the Rio Summer Olympics and for automobiles and general machinery as conditions in advanced economies pick up. It expected spending in the private sector to also expand slightly by 2% and real GDP by 3% due to marginal gains in trade and the consumer market. Slowing demand in China and the ensuing slowdown in Korean exports have been giving local policymakers headaches in recent months. But the head of Korea's central bank says there's a bigger concern: the rapidly increasing competitiveness of Chinese firms in the global market. Our Hwang Ji-e has the details.
The narrowing gap in competitive edge between Korean firms and those in China is likely to become a major challenge in the long term. That's what Korea's top central banker Lee Ju-yeol emphasized while attending a monthly meeting with local experts on Wednesday. Discussing future risks to the Korean economy, Lee said growing competition from Chinese companies should be a more pressing concern than slowing demand in China. In order to protect against such risks, the BOK chief advised local firms to pour their efforts into improving competitiveness through research and development. Citing the success seen in India, he also urged the government to work on improving the investment environment by stripping away red tape. He said India's rapid economic ascent came largely on the back of removing regulations that hamper foreign investment. Issues like a widely expected U.S. rate hike next month and the need for structural reforms in the face of Korea's aging population were also discussed at the meeting. Hwang Ji-e, Business Daily.
6 years ago on this day, Korea became a member of the OECD's Development Assistance Committee, officially becoming a donor nation. And our Lee Soo-eun takes a look back at Korea's history in the organization and its role going forward.
Here in Korea, November 25th is also known as Official Development Assistance Day, as it's a day when the country joined the OECD's Development Assistance Committee 6 years ago.
Korea's becoming member of DAC means that Korea now has to help other countries as not only moral obligation but also mandatory obligation as a part of a national policy.
Korea's brief donation history began 2.5 decades ago with small volunteer dispatches and modest loans. But since then, Korea's contributions in development aid expanded in volume, amounting to a total of over $2 billion in 2013, a 60-fold jump. And there's still more that Korea has to offer.
It's not just about economic development or science and technology. Korea can share its learning on balanced development, like know-how in social development and experience in democratization.
President Park Geun-hye also vowed to expand Korea's assistance to developing countries in a speech to the UN Sustainable Development Summit last September.
개도국 발전을 위한 재정 지원을 꾸준히 확대하고 개발 협력의 질을 높이기 위해서 노력해 나가겠습니다.
With the president's ODA drive, the government aims to expand its assistance volume by 35% to 0.2% of its total gross national income by 2020. 이수은, Business Daily.
You can often find delicious foods from around the world right here in Korea, and that's becoming increasingly true for beer as well. But domestic beer brands are not happy with this, as they say that the foreign brands are seducing customers with misleading deals. Our Eunice Kim tells us what this is all about.
4 cans of imported beer for 10,000 won, or less than $9. From 24-hour marts to major supermarkets, the promotion entices customers who don't mind drinking up the advertised savings.
행사 많이 하는 그런 수입맥주를 많이 먹어요. 행사 안 할 때는? 안 먹어요. 왜? 비싸가지고.
But is the price really a steal? What is the real cost? According to Korea Customs Service, 500 milliliters of beer, equivalent to a large can, averages out to 479 won, or about 40 US cents. By country of origin, Ireland's price was the most expensive at 826 won, and the Netherlands the cheapest at 364 won. Even after tacking on the tariffs, data from the tax bodies show prices were still less than 1,000 won, and less than the average factory price of domestically brewed malt. As overseas brands have been consistently claiming a bigger stake in the local market in recent years, Korean brands are lashing back.
We are saying we need to stop their deception of advertising promotions after already setting exorbitant prices from the get-go.
They contend imported beer is not subject to price regulations as they are, but is subject to lower taxes, so there is no reason for such high selling prices. When the government considered moving against such marketing tactics, online fans protested, leading to a pullback by the finance ministry, which explained no legal problems were found. Consumers say price is not the only factor when it comes to their choices.
You can experience new countries through the import beers, since the taste is definitely more varied.
And the appetite for the worldly brews is only growing. Data from Korea International Trade Association show beer imports in the first 10 months of the year have already surpassed the record volume the country brought in last year, signaling the war of nerves between Korean companies and overseas brands will not let up anytime soon. Eunice Kim, Business Daily.
Whether the Chinese currency will be included in the International Monetary Fund's basket of reserve currencies, known as the Special Drawing Rights, or SDR, is an issue that many have their eyes on. And if the yuan does receive the green light, how will this affect financial markets and the global economy? Let's take a closer look.
The Special Drawing Rights is an international reserve asset created by the IMF to supplement the official reserves of its member countries. It currently includes a basket of 4 global currencies: the US dollar, the euro, the pound sterling, and the Japanese yen. And the relative weights of these currencies as of now stand at 41.9% for the US dollar, 37.4% for the euro, 11.3% for the pound sterling, and 9.4% for the Japanese yen. But now it increasingly looks like the Chinese renminbi will be joining the mix. The IMF is expected to hold an executive board meeting on November 30th to decide whether to include the yuan in the SDR valuation formula. During the meeting, it will look into whether the yuan meets the requirements to be a quote-unquote freely usable currency. Experts say it's highly likely that the board will decide in favor of the proposal. China has long argued that the dollar-dominated global financial system has excessively exposed investors to U.S. risks. So will this be a blessing for China and other major economies around the world?
And to tell us more about this, Kim Il-sun, director of the Society for National Infrastructure at Hanyang University, joins us in the studio today. So good to see you.
Well, pleasure to be here.
All right, so like we saw in the report, the value of the SDR is currently linked to four currencies: the US dollar, the euro, the British pound, and the Japanese yen.
That's right.
So how does a currency enter the SDR currency basket, and what does it mean for the country and also the member countries?
Sure. To be part of the SDR, the currency must be recognized as stable and highly traded in volume worldwide. So there are only four, like you just mentioned. When a currency becomes the part of the SDR basket, simply means the money has become internationalized beyond the domestic use. It also means that the country who has the SDR basket currency as their own currency, they will enjoy more credit in the international capital market, and they also have more international power on economy as well as in diplomacy in their international affairs.
All right, then, well, this is not the first time that the Chinese currency had tried to join the SDR basket.
Right.
It did try back in 2010, but failed. But now we're hearing that it's almost likely that Chinese currency is going to enter the SDR basket of currencies. Then why the increased chance now and failed chance back then?
Well, the prominence of Chinese yuan in the past 5 years has grown substantially, and the yuan is becoming more of the key currency and recognized in the worldwide markets. In the past 5 years, Chinese government did everything they could to escalate the value of this yuan as well as the monetary market in China. For example, they opened the domestic foreign exchange market to foreign central banks, and they reported the foreign reserve of China data to IMF to ensure more transparency. And then also they adhere to IMF's request to lift the interest rate ceiling for the domestic banks. So they're doing everything to meet the international standards. And also to create more international spaces, they created Korean won and the Chinese yuan to be traded directly at the Shanghai FX market. It's a major move for both yuan and won.
All right, so if China obtains this reserve currency status, how will it affect the Chinese economy?
Well, it'll affect a lot. You know, China is becoming a reserve currency. Not every currency out there can enjoy such a status. It means that the world powers such as U.S., Germany, France, Britain, and Japan, who sits on the board of the IMF, have all recognized the power of China. It's a major change out there. But the fundamental benefit for China is that it'll enjoy a massive inflow of money coming into China, because all the nations out there will have to rebalance their foreign reserve away from dollar to euro, now to yuan. The estimated new demand and circulation for new Chinese yuan is estimated to be about $1 trillion by some 80 nations. And it's a huge change this time. And what it means is that China will enjoy the inflow of those money, $1 trillion, to their own nation. And it can be used for their domestic use and domestic economic growth. And the chance of inflation will also be lowered due to its own abundance of the capital reserve the Chinese of China will enjoy.
All right, so gaining acceptance as an SDR is not the end, though. It's the weights assigned to each of the currencies in the SDR basket is just as important. Now, why is that important, and how much of a share do you think China will receive if it joins SDR?
Sure. The composition of the different currencies in SDR means that how much money is circulated per their own currency in the international capital market. For example, after the inclusion of the Chinese yuan, the experts estimate that the US dollar will make up about 38% in composition, while euro will take about 34%, and the British pounds and the Chinese yuan both 10% each, and the Japanese yen will be lower than Chinese yuan at around 8%, which means Chinese yuan will receive more recognition, and eventually China will have a more opportunity to defeat Japanese market in the international financial market in Asia, because all these benefits and all these prominent status they will enjoy.
All right, so if the final decision is made, the IMF said that any change will take effect starting October of next year.
Sure.
Now, once the decision is finalized, how will this affect the Korean economy and the domestic financial market?
Sure. According to the IMF, when China's the growth rate for economy declines by 1%, the growth rate for entire Asia will drop by 0.3% because it's highly linked. So if China goes down, Asia goes down together. When the yuan receives more recognition as the inclusion of the SDL basket, the Japanese yen will lose its value as well. And Korean won is highly linked to yen, so it will also lose its value. But there are two opposite speculations. One says that as China's yuan becomes more strong, the international investors will look at more yuan as investment resort as opposed to Korean won. But the opposite view is that as China's yuan becomes more strong, Korean economy will benefit because it's strong ties with China in its own trade.
All right, so we'll have to keep an eye on what comes out of this IMF board meeting
Sure.
set for November 30th.
Sure thing.
Thank you so much for coming in today.
You're welcome.
That'll do it for today, but we'll be back with more tomorrow at the same time, same place. So don't forget to tune in then. Thanks so much for watching, and goodbye for now.